In this video, I'm going to talk about personal budgeting. And budgeting is it's the process of creating a plan to decide how you will spend or save your available income. And once your employer has taken out any deduction, so this could be like taxes or health insurance or retirement savings, they take all that out, and then the amount that's left is called your take-home pay. So it's important to know the difference between, your actual income versus what you're actually taking home, because you're going to develop your budget based on what you're taking home. So with the example one, what we're going to do is we're going to calculate monthly pay, because this can be helpful when making a budget. So say Saya works full-time as an executive assistant, and she has a check for $2,021.07 deposited into her checking account every other Friday. What does she earn in 1 year? And then what is her average monthly pay? So there's a couple ways to do this. A quick estimate, so there's an estimate of what her monthly pay would be to just double her biweekly pay. So if she makes $2,021.07 every other Friday, then we could just multiply that by 2, and that's a quick estimate of what she would get every month. And the reason I'm saying this is an estimate is every month there's a different number of weeks. And so because we have different number of days in all of our months. So if all of our months were the exact same length, then this would be an exact number. But since our months are not always the same length, this is an estimate because some months have more weeks than others. A more accurate calculation would be to find how much she makes for the entire year and then dividing it by 12 to get how much she gets per month. So in order to find her yearly pay, what we're going to do is we're going to first find her daily pay. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take her biweekly check and we're going to divide it by 14, since there are 14 days in 2 weeks. And if we do that, if we divide that by 14, we get $144.36. So this is how much Saya gets per day. Then we can take that number and get the yearly pay. So we're going to take $144.36 and we're going to multiply by the number of days in a year, which is 365. And if you multiply those two numbers, you end up getting $52,691.40. So this is how much she makes per year. And so then the third step, so I'm just going to number these. So we did daily, yearly, and then the third step is going to be to take that yearly amount, so $52,691.40, and divide it by the number of months, because we're looking for her monthly pay, so we divide by 12. And if we divide by 12, we end up getting $4,390.95 per month. So, and I'll just fill in the blank here. We ended up dividing by 12 to get the monthly pay. So notice that this is similar to the estimate that we found above, but it's actually a little bit more since this is a more accurate calculation. Now let's look at example 2. So we're going to calculate repeat spending, and this is really helpful when you're paying something repeatedly to calculate how much you're spending, per week or per month, just to get an idea of the total. It's really easy to say, hey, if I buy a latte at $4.25, that's not that much money. But let's look at what it is over a year and then ask ourselves if it's a lot of money or not. And so let's say you buy 2 lattes out every day at $4.25 per cup. So let's figure out per day what that would be. So if it's $4.25, but you're buying 2 of them, we're going to say times 2, and that's $8.50 per day on the lattes. And then if I wanted to know per year, then I'm going to take that daily amount, $8.50, and I'm going to multiply by the number of days in a year, which is 365. And if I do that, I end up getting $3,102.50. So we went from $4.25 per cup of coffee, thinking maybe that's not that much, to over $3,000 in a year, which is pretty significant. So for part B, let's say you spend $8.43 for lunch at Subway 3 times per week. How much would you spend during a 16-week semester? So let's figure out first how much that would be each week. So if we're spending $8.43 and we're doing it 3 times a week, I'm going to multiply $8.43 by 3. And so I end up getting $25.29. So that's per week that you're spending on lunch at Subway. And then if it's a 16-week semester, so for the entire semester, I'm going to take my weekly cost, $25.29, and multiply it by the number of weeks I'm in school. And so we multiply those two numbers, we end up getting $404.64 per the whole semester. So this is another one where instead of looking at Subway as $8.43, it's more important probably to look at, well, how much are you spending total for the whole semester and whether that's something that you actually want to be spending. Next, I want to look at what's called the 50-30-20 budget. This is just one type of budget. There are a lot of different budgets. If you just Google, different types of budgeting systems online, you'll find lots of different options. And we're not here to say that this is better than any of the other ones. We're just using this as an example, so that way you can practice, calculating using a certain budget, and then you could change the amounts depending on your own individual situation. So this budgeting system basically breaks things down by percentage, and the goal is to use 50% of your take-home pay for necessities, 30% for wants, and 20% to save or pay down debt. So let's look at each of these categories and what they mean. So 50% for necessities. So what does this mean? A necessity would be something you have to have no matter what. So these are things like food, shelter, insurance, and there's different types of necessities. So there's fixed necessities, and those are things that don't usually change. So think of like rent or your mortgage is usually the same amount every month. Insurance, yes, sometimes that changes, but usually it's pretty consistent for a good amount of time. Your cell phone bill, internet, childcare. You could think student loans. There are a lot of different examples there. And then variable necessities, those are things that change depending on maybe how much you use them. So things like gas, utilities, like water, and it's hard. This category, there's a note here, might include things that can be reduced with difficulty, but our current commitment, such as monthly payment on an expensive luxury car loan. So even though maybe an expensive luxury car loan isn't something that might be a need, if you've already committed to that loan and you have to be paying on it, then it would be part of this necessity category. And then the 30% for wants, that would be things that maybe even seem normal, but it could be stopped if you were in a financial crisis. So things like, fixed luxuries would be like fixed monthly payments for things that you don't necessarily have to have. So like Netflix or like a gym membership, something like that. And then variable luxuries would be things that are just changing depending on how much you decide to spend, like, dining out or maybe unnecessary new clothing, going to the movies, something like that. And then 20%, we want to save, just save or pay down debts that we have. And so, there's a note here, which is good advice. Having even a small cushion can help you avoid high interest rate debt situations like payday loans. If you don't have enough money for something, to have that cushion there, it can be helpful. So let's go ahead and do an example where we use the 50-30-20 budget. So in example 3, if Angel's take-home pay is $3,000 per month, how much should they spend per month on each of the following categories? So assume they're trying to follow the 50-30-20 budget. So if the 50-30-20 budget, we're going to go through those percentages one at a time. So the 50% we said was for necessities, and 50% as a decimal, if we want to find 50% of a number, is 0.50. So all we have to do to calculate necessities would be to take $3,000 and multiply by 0.50, and that would give us the amount of money that Angel would spend on necessities. So when you multiply those, you end up getting $1,500. So $1,500 would be spent on necessities. And then let's go to the 30. So the 30% we said was for wants. And so all we have to do is take that $3,000 in take-home pay and multiply it by 30% as a decimal, which is 0.30. So we're taking that decimal place, which is kind of hiding at the end there, and moving 2 spots to the left. And if we multiply those two numbers, we end up getting $900. So $1,500 for necessities, $900 for wants, and then last, the 20%, that would be for savings or debt management. So to do that, we're just going to take the $3,000 and multiply it by 0.20, which is the decimal version of 20%. And if we do that, we end up getting $600 for savings. And then in the end, just double check that all of your dollar amounts should add to the monthly pay. So $1,500 plus $900 plus $600, if we add those all up, we end up getting a total of $3,000. And again, this is just one example of budgeting. You can move these percentages around to fit your lifestyle. You could add more categories if you wanted to, but this gives you, it's a nice general idea of how this would work if you want to figure out the amount of money you want to spend in each category. All right, so now let's look at example 4. So let's say Jason brings home $2,146.79 per month and has the necessities expenses shown below. How much money is left after these expenses are paid, and then what percent of his budget is used for these expenses? We're rounding to the nearest 1/10 of a percent. Okay, so the first thing that I did here, you can see I already punched it all in my calculator. If we want to know how much money is left, and we know that Jason's take-home pay is this per month, then we need to add all these up. We need to add up all of these bills and find a total. And so I did that in my calculator. I added this list up, and so this is part A here. I'm adding all these up and I get $1,321.65. So that's the total that he of all the expenses. And then if we want to know how much money is left, then all we have to do is subtract this from the monthly pay. So left over, I'm just going to take $2,146.79 and subtract the expenses, and that will give me the leftovers. So $2,146.79 minus $1,321.65, and I end up getting $825.14. So that's the answer to A. So that's how much he has left over. And then we want to know what percent of his budget is used for these expenses. Really great question. It's nice to know, other than just a total, how, like, the percentage, how much that's taking up of the monthly budget. And so to find the percentage, all we have to do is divide. So we have to take the expense, so the $825 14, and actually, sorry, I take that back. That's actually a mistake. That's not the expense. That's how much we had left. So remember, the total expense is the $1,321. So let me write that number down. So $1,321.65, because we want to know the percentage of his expenses compared to his total income. So we're going to take the expenses and we're going to divide by the total monthly income, which is $2,146.79. So we're going to divide those two numbers in the calculator. So $1,321.65 divided by $2,146.79. Okay, and we end up getting this decimal. Now notice it's saying round to the nearest 1/10 of a percent. It's really important here that we convert this to a percentage before we round. So what we're going to do is we're going to write down the decimal. So I like writing the whole thing down. So 615640095. And then I convert it to a decimal by moving this decimal place 2 spots to the right. I could also, if you like using your calculator, just multiply by 100. Have your calculator do it for you. And so you can see 61.56 and then some other decimals or numbers there. Now we're going to round to the nearest 1/10 of a percent. So what we do is we look at this number, and so this number changed to 61.564000952, and we want the 1/10 of a percent, so that's where this 5 is. Now this 6 is going to make that 5 increase. And so if we round that, I'm just going to move my calculator over for a little bit. And so this is approximately 61.6%. So Jason's expenses are approximately 61.6% of his total monthly income or take-home pay.